everyone, this is Isaac White from the Crockett Tavern Museum here in Morristown, Tennessee. And of course, I know we seem to have been blowing up your news feeds lately with a lot of our videos and posts from recent events, but of course we're doing that partly to make up for missing the post this past weekend, as well as to get back up to our regular schedule, which will be continuing from today on out. Now, however, you do want to stay tuned, especially for the rest of the week. I know it's been a lot of posting, I'm sorry, but we do have a special video for you guys wherein at the historic Camp Blunt site in Fayetteville, Tennessee, we have a surprise guest which we interviewed out there, and I think you'll all really enjoy this, this next post coming up tomorrow. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the first people that were coming into the frontier and how inadvertently, although many of these folks were actually originally trying to just get out there, make a living for themselves, make a name for themselves, and also to escape the vestiges of civilization, they ended up inadvertently bringing the civilization to the wilderness. Now, first and foremost, we have to start off reading this small section from Benjamin Franklin. Now, it says here, the first settler in the woods is generally a man who has outlived his credit or fortune in the civilized parts of the state. His time for migrating is in the month of April. His first object is to build a small cabin of rough logs for himself and his family. The floor of his cabin is of earth. The roof is of split logs. A light is received through a door and in some instances through a small window made of greased paper. A coarser building adjoining this cabin affords shelter to a cow and a pair of good horses. The labor of erecting these buildings is succeeded by the killing of the trees on a few acres of ground near the cabin. This is done by cutting a circle around the trees 2 or 3 feet from the ground. Now this, of course, this particular passage comes from the 1790s memoirs of Benjamin Franklin, who is describing the first settlers coming out to the frontier. But before the settlers, there were the Long Hunters. And these Long Hunters, first and foremost, their period of prominence ranged from about the 1760s to the 1780s. So for us to have the 1790s memoirs of Benjamin Franklin now talking about settlers, it shows you just what's going to be happening in the timeline. But the Long Hunters were the first brave, adventurous spirits heading out onto the frontier. Now, the average Long Hunter is a man who has a family, has a farm, but these things do not appeal to him. There's no excitement, no drama, so to speak. And also, there's really not much of a promise of a better life to come. In fact, we see that a lot of these farmers, they were constantly struggling day in, day out, just trying to scratch a living out from the land. And when they heard that there was a fine chance to be had of making a good fortune for themselves and their family if they worked out on the frontier, then they were more than willing to go ahead and take that opportunity. So, of course, part of what drew them out to the frontier is romanticism, but another reason is that these men could go out into the frontier and make a living and make a fortune off of the abundance of nature. And this was such an enchanting promise, if you will, that some of these men who would come out to join on with these Long Hunter brigades would come out without even a rifle or accoutrements in their possession. And so they would have to sign on for a rifle, for other necessities, and then they would have to work until that debt was paid off, and from there they would continue working to make a profit for themselves. And hopefully, at the end of the year, if they had made enough money, they might be able to sell back the gun to the company. If not, they would just continue working. But it definitely was something that was certainly worthwhile because these men could make more in half a year's hunting than they could farming. But now we're going to continue on in our next clip talking about some of these Long Hunters and some of the privations they faced, as well as the settlers that would follow after.